So let's go into our next segment here. We are celebrating something. It was just, it's not today. Today is 622 for the books, of course, episode 69. But there's something else that's special for you and I. We are a lover of this specific model. And it recently, Nissan, we'll call it Datsun 620 Day, officially passed over the last few days. And you and I, we send back photos and images of six. We try to out 620 each other on our own personal thing, and we're all, in other pages. I'm always looking for cool 620 ideas, because we've been lovers of this vehicle for this truck for so long. I know you actually got one before I even got one. Um, and I had to rally around your campfire before I bought my own. So, yeah. Oh, you're muted, buddy.
I'm sorry, man. It's funny you mentioned that too because I was just having a memory. My 620, which I still have, I bought it over 10 years ago. This is 2023 marks 10 years that I bought it. New Year's Day, nonetheless. We bought this car and this truck, and yeah, I tell you what, man, it's been a, a fun ride with this truck. We've done so much with it. I've gotten a lot of enjoyment out of it, and it's actually the vehicle I've owned the longest, for me anyway. And we could talk about it some more as well. But like you said, yeah, it's 620 day just this week, and part of our back alley chat segment that we want to share this
It's,
episode is going
and
to be.
we're going to celebrate the 620 basically and all its greatness. We do it once in a blue moon, but because we're such 620 fanatics, I guess, if
We
you
are.
want. It's a weird thing that we're fanatical about that. I mean, it doesn't have the same lineage. It's like this underrated vehicle. And then there's some styling aspects about it and some really cool things about it that we just absolutely loved, and it triggered us. And now
Yep.
we're fanatical about them. So,
Yeah.
for those that don't know, give them a history lesson on the vehicle, Mike,
Let's go
or the
for it.
truck.
Yes, I thought this was really important. So for those that are with us that aren't familiar of what the 620 is or what it's about or any of its stats, let's go ahead and start off and give you a bit. So the 620 is a compact pickup built by Nissan, and for us in the U.S., otherwise known as Datsun at the time. It's actually the fourth generation of Nissan's compact pickup. It was produced from 1972 to 1979. Nissan produced its first compact pickup for the U.S. in as early as 1959. Believe it or not. Um, we've been essentially Nissan's been selling trucks in the U.S. At that point, you do the math, 64 years
Yeah.
of Nissan pickups in the U.S. Prior to the 620, you had the 220, the 420, the 520, and then you get the 620. In 1980, we were preceded by the 720, and then of course we have the D21 hard body. And it wasn't until mid 90s that we began to see the Frontier badging come into play. And then let's not forget this is not a compact, but it would be the full size, which is the
Yeah.
Titan, which
Yeah,
was
Nissan started stepping into the full size country and the big boy pants, and then that's what it was. But we're talking about the mid size now.
yeah.
For those that don't know, of course, the 620 was also called the 1500 in other countries. We didn't want to leave you guys out, just so you know. We didn't forget about you. But again, it's funny. Like, when I started getting into the 620, you find out that there was like you run into like little small groups of people like that are Datsun fanatics or Nissan fanatics or people that used to really work for Nissan or Datsun back in the day. You kind of meet those people and you
Uh-huh.
just kind of grill them and talk to them. And one of my favorite stories that I'm still trying to pin down is getting
Ooh.
these racers to talk about what I'm showing back here and these Baja races, like the Spencer
Oh,
Low vehicles. Those things are awesome, and I wish Amon Hall was on with us tonight, who's just fanatical about these 620s and that racing series,
yeah.
from those vintage years, and like with the Simmons vehicles, which is what this one is.
Okay.
Simon is, and of course the Spencer Low and all those amazing vehicles at that time. But my favorite story that I know to date, until something else surpasses it, is Mr. K used to drive around in a 620, and he would be wearing a cowboy hat,
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
and he'd
Yeah.
be rocking a cowboy hat while he drove a 620 because he thought that that was just it felt very American for him. And
Mm.
I would have to agree. So every time I'm like ever in a 620 or I'm driving it, it just kind of, I don't know why I think about that. It just brings a huge smile to my face. I think Johnny Gable, who was the secretary for Mr. K, kind of told me that story when we were just having a drink one night long time ago, and she said
Yeah.
that he was just infatuated with that particular vehicle for a short time. So yeah, it's pretty funny.
I think that's pretty awesome, man. Um, it's cool, and we'll get into this. I know one of the things we wanted to talk about was that a lot of the similar components were used with the 620 as the Z car. They both shared an L series engine, for example.
Yeah.
One was a four-cylinder, the other one was a six-cylinder. But we got more on that later. Um, you mentioned the pickup itself. Its entries into motorsports. Even there were a few variations of the pickup.
Mhm.
For us, we have the single cab, which was the most plentiful
Yeah.
model, I would imagine. The more sought after at this point was, at least on the streets,
The
is
king
the King
cabs.
cab.
Yeah.
The King cab, yeah. And it wasn't until
Are you gonna
last
run?
year.
You have a gallery that we should be running in the background,
I
don't
do,
you?
I do. I
So
Yeah.
we had the standard cab, we had the king cab, and then we also had a run of Chinook campers that went for a
Yes.
while. Now that's just talking in generalities, but there was also the standard rear-wheel drive and the 4x4 versions as well.
The 4x4.
So yeah, and we have a gallery that's kind of running, and this is just a collection of our own personal photos, some old advertisements, some vehicles that inspire us,
Our
or
fans
just
photos that we
or
asked.
yeah,
I
just
should have mentioned, we asked to submit fans to submit, and they did.
and this
So
is
they
what they
are
sent
included.
us, a
Yes.
combination of their favorite 620s, that we'll just kind of let run in the background. I There you go, Chinook. Those things, like for the longest time, you could find them. Now they're unicorn horns. They're hard to find, man. So, if you are a lover of these, I would say you definitely want to probably pick one up and just stash it away in mothballs and then figure out what you're going to be doing at it. Now, we talked about all the variations of the models, but there was also special editions. There was a little, and most people know this if you know the model, a little Hustler edition.
Hmm. Yep.
Yeah,
That.
and that came out with a while, obviously for the stickering and things like that, and apparently was like the package that you could buy. And I think, and this is me piecing it all together because at the time I was not even born at that point. But not trying to show my age. I was close, but I wasn't quite
You
there
were
yet.
close.
I was close. I was just banging on the door, if you will, on the sack and just trying to get out. That's probably too much information, but
Let's,
needless to say, I want to say that was probably like, let's just call it what it is, prehistoric Nismo,
yeah.
maybe,
Yeah. Well, we know that the
or
620 was in motorsports, was involved.
yeah, that would be motorsports. Would it be a version of that? I don't know. Interesting.
Well,
What would be akin to like,
technicality, akin. That's probably a good word
uh,
to
yeah,
to use.
maybe
Yeah, yeah.
cool
Um,
stuff.
a few other stats here regarding was the engine, of course, like we mentioned. It was the L20B four-cylinder engine, carbureted. Most of the 620s, most likely, if they haven't been swapped by now, had the four-speed transmission.
Yeah,
us as enthusiasts, and
But
we'll
you
tell
want
you
that
why.
5. You
You
want
want
that
the
5.
5 speed, and for good reason on that one. Personally, I still have the 4 speed in mind. Your cruising speed and or to comfortably
I
drive.
coulda gotten you a 5-speed, brother. I keep telling you, "Let's
I
get you a
know.
5-speed."
It's about 65 miles an hour. Meanwhile, the 5 speed can probably get you up to 80s in general, man.
No, that's
More
15.
modern
That's
speeds.
15 miles an extra. 50 miles an hour
That's a
extra.
lot.
I'm telling
That's a
you.
lot, man. It really does.
That day
It
and
does play
age.
different.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what?
Uh,
I apologize. We forgot all those options. I forgot there was a 4-door. Did we not mention that?
no, we didn't.
There was a super rare 4-door edition.
And I don't think those were available in the U.S. Every time that I see a 4-door 620
Where's
pickup,
that at?
it's always like in the Middle East somewhere.
Eh,
Like,
okay.
yeah, I've seen restoration videos or car wash video. You see
On a
something on social
4-door.
media.
And it's a full 4-door. The bullet side goes all the way down the
It's a
side.
bullet side 4-door Datsun 620. Yeah,
Man.
I would love to see one, much less have one in the U.S. That would be such a
Okay.
piece to share at Nissan car shows, without
That's
a
very
doubt.
cool. All right. So basically we had the 4-speed, we had the 5-speed, and then obviously everyone knows that the 620 gave way to the 720, which for those that don't know, it was built in Tennessee at the Smyrna plant or one of the location. I think it was the location which was solely built at the Smyrna plant in Tennessee. The 720 maybe? Full circle?
720 was the first for sure, and then of course, if not soon after, future models. I've seen a lot of front wheel drive vehicles come out of the Smyrna plant as well.
Okay. Very
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah.
So
And I know we've touched on it just a little bit, Miles. So to kind of share, if we haven't shared in a while, what we personally, our personal opinions of this truck was for me myself. I have a 79 year model 620. Uh, it had factory AC, which was a rarity. When I bought it, it worked. Even to this day, I'm sure if I add a little Freon to it, it'd still be just fine. Again, I had it for 10 years. It was my daily driver for about a year and a half, man. And you got to imagine, this was not too long ago, less than 10 years from now. And that was the only vehicle that I had, man, and this thing was so reliable, dude. I was very, very impressed by this truck and having gotten around and put some real miles on it. And it, I'll tell you this too. Of all the vehicles, and this is amazing to me. Of all the vehicles that I've owned, and this includes Z's, various generations of Z's, and others, I have never gotten so many thumbs up, horn honking. They get your attention, giving you the thumbs up on the road than I have driving that 620. And that's the God's honest truth on that one, man. It's so cool. I think, truthfully, um, everybody's got a Datsun story. It seems as though everybody I know or strangers come up to you with a Datsun story, and oftentimes it's the 620. Someone had an uncle, or whatever the case may be, and they're happy to share it with you. So I've had such a great experience with this truck, and uh, again, that's what today's about: is giving it some love.
yeah.
You know.
What's funny is me, I went a different direction. I just started buying in quantity for some weird reason.
Yeah.
Like I bought my first one, and I just decided to go. I've done the massive car projects that I know are going to take me like 2 or 3 years. And I was kind of done with that. I would just do these quick flips for like 3 or 6 months with Z32s and everything else. But for some reason, I wanted to do something extremely different and extremely fabricated. So I said, you know what? I'm going to buy one of these 620s and I'm going to put a VG30 DE non-turbo, 5-speed and all, brakes and all into that car. And that's kind of what it's been for me. I've been doing a fabrication job, getting the frame fully developed, and that's really what I've been kind of pouring a lot of myself into on that car and just having fun with it, not really having a massive budget, but just having real fun with the car and
Yeah.
doing something that really no one has ever done before or very few. But while I was doing this project, like I started meeting like all these people from other parts of the country. Like I've got a few friends that are based out of France that are
Oh
actually
wow.
huge fans of the 620, which they didn't get there. So they actually had to import their cars. And then from there also had to buy all their parts and everything else. So it's not, they have the rarity of that vehicle there. Not like here, where it's like there's actually still quite a lot of these vehicles around. I feel like they amass around like the Washington area a lot because there
Oh
was so many California dealers that were
yes.
along the West Coast. So you still see a few
Well,
of them in
that's where it
California.
began. Yeah, everything was
Yeah,
permeating
yeah. So
from
you
the
see,
west coasts.
yeah, so you see a lot of them in Oregon and Washington. I mean, some of them are a bit rust buckets, but there are tons of 620s in those neck of the woods. I feel like there's still a lot if you're really hunting for these. Yeah, you want to hunt in like Arizona, New Mexico, West Texas. There's still quite a bit of these. Other than that, I don't know where else to tell you to go hunt for these. I mean, they're all over the country. And
Yeah.
you can kind of
Wh-
still find them, but I feel like in the last few years, they went from really being like $1,000 to being like $5,000, $6,000. And I think they're kind
Yeah.
of going to be what the 240 is. It's they're just going to shoot up. And
Yeah.
then
Yes.
you also take into consideration that it was a 620. So a lot of these vehicles weren't put in garages. They weren't.
Yeah.
They were pretty much farm
You
vehicles. So they had rough
farm
lives.
trucks,
And then they were kind of
utilitarian.
parked on the side of the barn and replaced with the newest, latest, and greatest.
Yeah.
So if you get a chance and you see one out there, buy it. If you're really in, if you want to get into these vehicles, if whether you want to restore one or you want to just kind of take them and modify it and customize it in your own way. But that's what I would recommend. Now, we'll talk a little bit about options and all the modifications. But that was my own personal story. I mean, I
Yeah.
loved working on the car with you.
Yeah.
Working on your vehicle with you. I got a great experience with it. I worked on Ion's car, who also has a 620.
Also a 620 owner.
It's
Yeah.
one of those weird vehicles that we all own together, and it's weird. Like a lot of Z32 guys just ended up buying 620s here in Texas. I don't know if that's the same for the rest of the country. Anybody's there that can chime
Everybody
in
needs someone
or
to
chime
haul
in.
some
If you want
tires
to haul like engines or car parts that, and
in
you're looking for an
style.
amazing in style and have an awesome beater, that's the 620 is the ride for you.
620.
But that's kind of been my personal take on it. It's just kind of been, I would say you opened that world up kind of to me, and then I've just kind of been experienced just a landslide of just really cool stories from other folks, and I've enjoyed working on it myself and getting insights and feedback from you guys. But
Yeah.
I know
Yeah. Yeah.
you have a 79, and
Yes.
yeah.
S- So, and that's one thing too for anybody who wants to know more about the 620s, and much less again, we're nerding out. It's the 78 and 79 year models. In my opinion, are the models you want to go after the most. And one of the primary reasons behind that is that the 78 and 79 year models had front disc brakes, and very much improved because prior to that, you had four-wheel drum brakes. Um, I Oh man, I can't imagine what front drum brakes are like, man. I haven't driven in one in a very long time, and probably for a good reason because it probably scares the bejesus out of you, if especially if it's not been maintained or. Um,
Well, calm down. It
granted,
wasn't like it wasn't like
granted,
throwing an anchor out the window
that's true.
and just
Well,
and praying. I
yeah,
mean, there were still brakes that were viable. They weren't the greatest. Like when you mashed on them, you're like,
yeah,
you know,
yeah. But you bring a good point too because you didn't really need, as opposed, you
you
probably
didn't
didn't need much
you were
stopping power
rocking a truck.
anyway. Yeah,
You were looking for friction contact and trying to hold something for carrying loads or going down embankments. The drum brakes actually probably weren't that bad.
they
But when you were looking for something that was traveling at a higher rate of speed and you needed clamping force and to
yeah,
stop at a time,
yeah. Well, and
I would say let's not argue drum
yeah.
brakes versus disc brakes right now, but
well,
yeah,
well, you said a key word, which was high rate of speed, and which we've already established that the Datsun 620 in stock
eh,
form didn't really have a
it's
high rate of
cruising,
speed.
man. Like you
But
just that's the vehicle you want to get to. if you're inner city or you're just at a point in your life where you're not trying to go fast, you're just trying to be chill and cruise
Cruise.
and be cool.
Yeah. But
So
also, you mentioned that the 620 didn't need much stopping power to begin with because it was a very, very light vehicle.
yeah,
Granted, it's built out of steel as opposed to whatever composite or
good
aluminum,
steel.
etc. The good steel. The title has a weight of 2,300 pounds.
Yeah,
It's a very light truck. You can push it. Like if you had to move it,
we
you can
pushed
do
a
it by
lot of them.
yourself.
I
Yeah,
pushed and pulled a lot of
it's
620s.
it's
And
cake. It's really not that bad, and it's because they're so light. And so when you tack on how lightweight it is, how simple it is to
yeah,
work on in stock form, my personal opinion is that's been very, very reliable vehicle. The only time I got stranded, and I wish my buddy George was online right now. The only time I've ever got stranded in my 620 is because I realized that I ran out of gas, and that's just my own stupidity, man. Because other than that, that Datsun did phenomenal the entire time that it was my only vehicle, uh, for sure. And I should mention one last thing too, is that because a lot of these components were shared and belonged to the L series engine, that was a very common engine of its time.
mhm,
And even today, L series components, again, stock ones, are relatively affordable to buy. So if you did, for anybody out there who's considering or have the opportunity to get a 620 project vehicle, simple things like brake lines, ignition wires,
yeah.
coil, cap, rotor, these components are relatively affordable to grab as well.
Up until
Uh,
recently,
yeah.
there was a lot of availability aftermarket. Like you could literally go to Rock Auto and pretty much
Yeah.
clean up. Like I
Yes.
remember when I first bought mine, I went to Rock Auto and I spent like, I don't know, like $200 and I came back with a treasure trove of stuff. It's a little bit like that. There's still a few things that are available nowadays, but it's kind of bled off a little bit. And originally, because Thailand actually sold the 620 as the 1500 for a really long time. And that's where half the parts are coming from, based out of Mexico
Oh.
and Thailand. If you're still hunting for like rubber and glass and some sheet metal, that's where you would pull them from. And that stuff, when it first hit market, was like the windshield front molding. You could pick that
Ooh.
thing up for like $9. Right now, it's like $68 or something like that. And you're like, for us people that knew the pricing, we're like, good lord. For other people were just like, man, that's cheap. And I was like, it was cheaper.
Yeah.
But,
That's yeah.
it is what it is, you
It
know?
brings a good point though too, and I've seen a few memes like this. Of course, there are two types of Datsun owners, and it's Datsun owners with money and Datsun owners without money. And you can always tell which one they are based on how nice the build is, And you got the ones, yeah.
Yeah, I know, I get a little bit like, I remember when a dime bag used to cost a dime, just like, it's like, but no, I feel what you mean, but that's the beauty of it, everything with the car, it's been just kind of this ongoing development, but as the car becomes like, it can become like a nostalgic thing. People
Yep.
pay for nostalgia, and it drives up value, and the scarcity of parts and things like that is just kind of crazy. My you were asking me, like, one of my favorite stories is,
Yeah.
so when I first bought my, I was probably on my second 620 at the time, and I was like, hey, I need to start like just making sure that I have enough parts. So I'd buy make I'd find out if these people had like 620 stashes, all over the country. And I found this guy who had these like chrome bumpers, and he had two of them side by side.
Uh-huh.
And I think it was like Marketplace or eBay or something like that. I messaged him. I was like, "Hey, I'm really interested in your bumpers. By the way, do you have any other 620 stuff? I'd be interested in like seeing what you had." And he was like, "Are you really interested?" I was like, "Sure, of course. I'm serious. Yeah, duh." And he goes, "I have 29 chrome Datsun 620 bumpers." And it was like, "How interested are you truly?" And I was like, "You have that many chrome bumpers?" And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "I used to own an aftermarket parts business, and we had this building and it caved in. These 620 parts were sitting there, just, and I never got around to clearing out the rubble." And I
Mm.
remember I told you this,
Yes.
and so I called all the 620 owners and that I knew, and I
Yeah.
kind of said this big megahorn, and I was like, "Hey fools, This is what's gonna happen. I know a guy who has the last stash of chrome Datsun 620 bumpers in the
Yeah.
country. I was like, who's in? And so I put this massive, like, I don't know, buy it, group buy together. And I was like, all right, everybody chip in, like, whatever I forgot what I got
It
them
was
for.
affordable. I know that
It
much.
was
Yeah.
affordable. And I remember I got them for like, I want to say I got them for like $55. I charged like $75 or something like that just so I could cover my ends and
Cover
unboxing
your
everything
nut.
and rebagging.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to get rich on them. I just wanted to be able to get whatever I wanted to get. I wanted to get first pick.
Yeah.
So I bought something like, you remember that when you came to my house and it
Oh.
was like there was like 25 chrome bumpers there on the floor, and
Yes.
you're like, he's gone crazy. And I was like, no,
Yeah.
it was just I picked out the ones
Wha-
that I wanted. And so
yeah.
I still have like a personal stash of
I,
like four chrome bumpers. I think I hooked up Ion with like four. I
yeah.
think you got one or two of them.
That's the funny story with me because what I remember so much about that time was personally, I didn't really see it. I was like, I don't need one. I mean, mine's not dented too bad. And then you
Yeah.
were so insistent. You're like, bro, you need one, and like you essentially persuaded me. And I have one. I have one. I think you wanted to sell me three. I got one. Just to
For the
what are friends
apocalypse, in
for?
case the apocalypse came down and you needed a car
Yeah,
part. I was like, bro.
yeah.
So, but yeah, that was like my funny story. I started doing that where I was buying these like caches of like car parts for the 620, and then that's when you're like fully addicted. You're like, ah, shit, I'm an addict. So that's what it is. So,
Yeah,
but yeah, that was my personal funny story, kind of laughing at
yeah,
myself. But let's go into some of the strengths of the 620.
yeah.
So, if you were buying this car back in the day, what were you kind of getting for your money?
Well, if you're asking me, I mean, you got to think about the time that it was 70s. I mean, this car,
Gas
this truck,
shortage.
gas shortage, right? And
Yeah.
this truck was right at around that beginning. 1972 was its first year. So yes, you were looking for something fuel efficient, and this truck was probably one of the more fuel efficient pickups out there, I would argue. And again, combined with its lightweight, it was an efficient vehicle, relatively speaking, for its time. I, again, these pictures and these bills that we're showing with you guys here in the background, again, this might be a personal opinion though, but this truck was stylish. I mean, not only was it affordable, Datsun at the special time was an affordable brand, but when you look at it today, what other truck do you know is called a bullet side? Just based on its
Right.
styling. It's it's a beautiful truck in my opinion, and it stood the
Test of
test of
time.
time. Yeah. We mentioned its reliability. We've talked about its simplicity as well, and affordable parts for it. So I mean, very much a lot of its strengths for this pickup. Very durable pickup. And again, for those who find one at a deal, I would say if you're interested, don't even think about it. Just buy it. You'll thank yourself later. Honestly, that's what I did. Miles, you want to? Did I ever tell you how much I paid for my 620?
Mm-mm. How much you get it for?
This was back in 2013. $1,300, dude.
Nice. I bought
That's
mine.
yeah.
I bought my first one, and they were starting to climb, but I still got in early.
Yeah.
$1,600, and it ran and drove on
Oh.
exterior wheels. So I was able to drive around the farm for a little while, and yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I sent you
Yeah.
videos when I got
Yes,
it.
you have.
I
Yep.
drove it
Yep.
around, and before I started dismantling it and
Yeah.
everything, I took my brother
Well.
for a drive to go get ice cream or something. We went like down the mountain and went and grabbed ice cream, and I think we had a beer, not in that order, but and then that's it. We headed back up, and then I started dismantling it like a month later
Yeah.
because I'm got
That
like that.
that brings up a good point too, because one of the things that we wanted to talk about as far as this segment goes, which is modifications. So we've already talked about it in its stock form. This is very much a truck that's been modified. The aftermarket for this truck not only still exists, but I want to argue it's growing. It
I would
definitely is
say
growing.
it's definitely it was in its infancy in the last 5 years, and it's just gotten really crazy as of late. Like it was always like easy to slam this car, and but guys are kind of doing everything from lifting the vehicle, off-roading and outlanding are huge right now. So people are
Yes.
modifying these cars going up and going down or keeping it historic. But let's talk a little bit about the options for modifying it, either going up or going
Yep.
down. So obviously there's raised suspension options, where you're taking other options from the 720, which had a lot more beefiness. And you're stealing parts and components for that. I would
Yeah.
highly recommend going online. This is where forums come in, and we're huge advocates for forum information
Advocates.
versus Facebook and YouTube information, because a lot of information gets lost. But if you go back in some of the really good old forums like Nico and I think even Hybrid,
Ratson.
Ratson,
.net.
have
Yeah.
really good information, um, for just modifications and stuff. It's kind of nuts because like nobody's replied on, nobody's there's a few guys holding the candles up for that kind of stuff
Yeah.
and forums nowadays and still contributing information, and my hat goes off to them,
Yes.
because those are the guys that are still giving out profound information, these huge wealths and pools of knowledge, that you don't
Hmm.
really take advantage of anymore. But
Yep.
again, one of my favorite memes is there's like this guy, and he's like praying to like this image of, I think it's like Buddha or something like that, and the image is the guy is standing there, and it says, "Me with my problem with my 20-year-old car," and the Buddha guy is an old forum guy from 15 years ago who fixed my issue back in the day, you know, and it's true. There was tons of information and tons of like back and forth, like, well, what did you do? What did I do? And like brainstorming. So if you get a chance, go
Yeah.
back, support the forums, make a donation for the information that you found, because those guys
True.
need to keep the lights on, as it were, for those forums. So again,
Yeah.
just my harping on forums. But
Yeah.
again, as far as modification, there's tons out there. Lowering suspension, I would say
Yeah.
there are guys that, doing the old, I'm going to say the old mini trucking days, we would drop it on blocks.
The
So
blocks.
you could
Yeah.
do it on blocks. But the beautiful thing about the 620 that not a lot of people know is you can actually adjust the front suspension just on its own. So you don't really have to do any modification to the front of the vehicle. They have these beautiful like slide in and out options for the torsion bars, where you can actually drop that vehicle up to 2.5 inches, I
Yep.
think, and you can pretty much get it like to a nice, comfortable, low riding position. You can buy the blocks for the rear, and
Yep.
you can literally slam that vehicle for $60,
It's
I
not very
think,
much. Yeah.
not
It's
very
pretty affordable.
much.
I
And
think
I was
the
like blown
only
away the first time that you could do that. It was just kind of crazy.
the
So, but if you want to go with a classier setup, there are options out there that are now doing like coilovers where you're using something like QA1 systems or even airbag or air ride suspensions.
yep.
I mean, it really doesn't stop there. You got guys like Bibani Customs who are doing um, QA1 coilover systems, which is what I have on one of my frames. And
Yeah.
then I'll probably do an air ride on another one just so I can get the experience, or try to have the comparison between two. I'm just because I'm kind of bored like that.
Yeah.
Fender flares, back in the day, it was really just one
It's
solid, off road rally flare. And now there are tons of
there are
flares.
so many iterations of Flare.
There's
Yes.
tons. There's like Panda makes an amazing kit, and you'll see it come up here on the gallery. That purple Datsun that comes up, who makes an amazing fiberglass kit that is now
Yeah.
like skyrocketed. It used to be like a grand. Now it's like I don't even know how much
Yeah.
it is anymore. Now they want your firstborn, but it's still an amazing kit regardless. Wheels, we were stealing six lugs from old Centerline stuff, but now there's so much six lug that's out there because of the off road and the outlanding market. There's
yeah.
tons of just amazing forged great stuff out there. So you got to
Well,
go.
I
Now let's talk about 5-speed swaps.
yeah, again, that is a must in my opinion to have for that again for to establish a cruising speed, in today's times, again this truck is oh god, 79, 72. Okay, so it's 50 years minimum now that this truck's
Mhm,
been out. So you got to think about what the speed limits were like 50 years ago as opposed to what they are today.
mhm.
And yeah, a 5-speed swap will kind of get you back up to modern times, and it essentially requires no modification
Yeah. So guys were
to.
stealing the Datsun 5 speed. They were taking the 5 speed from the 5 speed 620s. And then they were also taking the oh Jesus, what's the other 5 speed that everybody wants? The 280ZX, the non-turbo.
280ZX.
Um,
Yep.
yeah, I mean, there's tons of 5 speed. If you want to get really crazy, you could start stealing another 5 speed from another platform and just making an adapter plate. I mean, which it they're out
uh,
there. So, like I'm
they're
telling you,
out
man,
there.
the sky's the limit. Brake upgrades are, man, forget it. They
Those
were
as
stealing
well.
the Toyota single caliber stuff. They
Yep.
were the big popular one right now is the 300ZX brake. For some reason, everybody
Yes.
steals the Z32 300ZX brakes. They are like gold across the 240SX forums, across, the 240Z guys are stealing them now, or the S30 guys are stealing them
Everybody
now.
steals the Z32.
Everybody,
They're very period correct, and they're a good option. Yeah.
the cool thing about it is they're repopping them now. So now you can find recasting of the Z32 stuff out there.
Oh,
So you don't
nice.
have to go hunt and don't pay those crazy prices. Because you can actually find them. Believe it or not, you can find recast options that are available now. You just kind of got to do a little hunting. You can find them through Rock Auto or eBay. There, I saved you about 150 bucks.
Nice.
Let's see here. Engine swap. Oh my God,
Oh
engine
God.
swaps are crazy. So everybody
Worst.
obviously has the original L4 option,
Yep.
but I think where it kind of started to get crazy was guys started sticking in the SRs early on, the SR20
SR20s.
DEs, especially
Yes.
the non-turbos, and then the DETs started getting crazy,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
then the CA18, the baby Skyline motor.
yeah. The and going back to the SR20 is that they would combine the NA motor with their independent throttle bodies, which that
Oh
was a
yeah,
swap that I was very much looking
that was
into
so
because
nice. It
it
was
was so nice.
sick.
It was modern, fuel injected, and then it had that ITB setup, which kind of was a nod to that vintage. But it still it looks so good, and
Yeah.
that was one of the first swaps I had considered, if I ever did with this truck. Yeah,
But now it's crazy. Like people are starting to like. So I saw the V6, which we're talking Z31 V6, right?
yeah,
Single overhead cam. You could fit it in this car with little modification,
yeah.
with no problem. Um, Me personally, I'm trying to do a VG30 DE, which is dual head cam, which is extremely wider. So I'm working through my own bag of squirrels for that. I'll get it. I'll let you know how it all works out when I'm done. But I mean, the sky's the limit. There's obviously guys sticking V6s, V8s. I heard there's somebody working on a VK, which is the V8 type motor.
Oh,
They're trying to stick that in there
too
with a
much.
350Z transmission.
Wow. Wow. And that's what I imagine. I'm just thinking about that engine bay and how much space that it has. I'm
You have a
assuming
lot. I
this.
mean, well, you can cut
Well,
away a lot.
you can cut away a lot. I'm assuming that there would be modification to the firewall in some cases. I mean, did you have any experience with that with your VG30 swap at all?
The problem that I'm having, and really this is the only problem. Everything on the passenger side, not a problem. Everything on the driver side, the issue that I'm having is you've got that steering line that doesn't give you any option. It's just straight to the front assembly. So it's just like you have to work around it, and that's just where I'm at right now. So I have to modify the header to kind of tuck it all in. But on the
Okay.
passenger side, but the other thing too is I'm going to a coilover setup, so it kind of gets rid of all that torsion bar setup. So I get a really nice amount of real estate, and then I'll just run the exhaust out the sides or the back, and I'll figure that out as I go. But
Okay.
space is a commodity in some of these
Yeah.
is some of these old vehicles. So that's just one of those things. I wanted to alleviate as much of non-essential stuff and really update everything to allow me to have the most availability of space in there. But I will say one thing, you know, you don't realize how big or how long that engine bay is. I mean, of course, the S30, you've got a really long amount of space. You can fit a VG30 and you can fit two VG30s
Shoot, you
almost
could
in
get inline six in that thing. Yeah.
there. Yeah, So
Yep.
which makes up for it. But an inline four, not so much. But the reality is, you once you put the V6 in there, you still have about I want to say it's about 14 inches till your radiator. So you actually
Yeah.
have a little bit more space than what you would get out of a Z32 if you
You
do
can
it
actually
right.
stand in front of the engine while still in the engine bay to
Maybe,
service. I
maybe. We'll see.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
it's tight, but it's still good though. We'll see how it goes. Now,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
let's talk a little bit about notable builds. Is there anybody that you want to give a nod out to for notable builds?
Ooh, ooh, good point. For me personally, I'll be honest, the builds that I've seen, um, they've it's all been aesthetic builds,
Okay.
and in some cases it's really hard to tell whether it's a render or actual. I'll tell you what though, this Pandem kit we're showing here,
Mhm.
I remember when this came out. I actually saw this in person. This was 2016 at SEMA. That vehicle was there, that 620. So if I had to pick, the Pandem kit would probably be the one that I've spent a lot of time looking at. I don't think I would ever replicate it, but I do appreciate it for what it is. That is an easy choice. And then, other than that, in terms of engine swaps, there regarding the 620, there was a number of magazines back in the day. I I, I want to say I have two separate magazines out which had the same feature, which was a SR20 swap into a 620. And
Projectbuildsmagazine.com. Project Builds Magazine. It was episode number, or it was magazine number.
oh, here
Oh,
we
dude.
go. Here we go. This
Yeah,
is the nerd
sorry,
part.
sorry.
All right.
This is me. This is why we nerd
This
out.
is
I'm
why we're
telling
here.
you. This is
Yeah.
why we're here. This is what we do. But yeah, I know exactly which one you're talking about. And they were actually one of the six, first magazines that actually talked about doing that swap. And what I
They talked
loved
about
about that
everything.
and what I loved
Yeah.
about that magazine, and just a shout out to those guys, they had a short lifespan, but they taught you basically how to do everything on your engine. Like, hey, you're going to swap out this engine for this. They did a lot of Honda stuff, but they did do an excellent Datsun 620
They did.
um, episode where they actually, this is everything you need to know. This is how you need to modify this water pipe to work with this
Oh, the throttle
radiator
body cables. I
and the
remember they were
throttle
talking
body
about,
cables. Yeah, it
yeah,
was just for those that don't know, that is like,
an
you know,
awesome feature.
and you can find it online, but I think it's like half of it's gone because it's no longer supported through Photo Bucket or whatever it was at the time. But yeah, dude, like it got super nerdy, man. Like, so yeah, just to name a few, like these are my old magazines, like
Oh,
just
wow.
old mini truck. I mean, I'm constantly hunting for like old Datsun mini truck stuff. So yeah, I'm weird like
Yeah.
that. Anyway,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah, let's move on down the line.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
As
yeah.
far
We
as
did mention, yeah, you
yeah,
mentioned Bibani Customs as being one of the most, one of the modern aftermarket suppliers for the
yeah,
620. For anybody who's looking for additional uh, aftermarket support for the 620, amongst others, you can definitely look at Skillard, which is a company off the northwest part of the country. They provide a lot of sheet metal, um, laser cut, stamped, bent pieces. Very impressive pieces, actually. We've had a good friend Ben, who's the owner there, make some very nice pieces: door cards, floor heel plates, um, a variety of items that you really didn't even think you needed until you saw their catalog, and you're like, "Damn it, this guy's got it." So, Skillard is definitely one of those places.
the rear
Uh,
license plate piece. What else did he do?
yes, see,
The tailgate back panel piece, which is impossible to find nowadays. For some reason, it just all
there you
fell
go.
off the trucks at the same time. But
Did you
he
see
makes
that?
that piece. Yeah, 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 I got all that. I have a few of his things already. The door cards, the door filler pieces. Yeah, man, he's starting to make a lot of that kind of stuff. So
And this is a really good example for those who see the picture of us. You can see here on the tailgate that there is no back panel, even in this stock photo.
yeah. Mhm.
And for somebody to come up and provide you, later on they were available, but many years didn't have this option. And for Sealer to come in and make that option available for you to sit yourself on the tailgate or place whatever components you needed. Uh, really, really clever piece to have and to offer. Apex engineered is also one of the other suppliers. A lot of suspension components or aftermarket subframe components are available for this. And the last thing that we had thought to say regarding the aftermarket support is that, like we mentioned earlier, a lot of the components or even the theory behind how this truck operates can be related to the Z car. And so if you are needing some support on your 620, don't be afraid to ask your local Z technician or your local Datsun Z technicians. You might be surprised by what their answer is and how they might be able to support you with that, because of such similar components, if not the identically the same components uh, from there.
Yep.
Yeah. Any
Well, very,
we're wrapping up on this, man. What else?
yeah,
Anything else that
I,
we're
I think
missing?
that's pretty much all I had, man. We've talked about this. I mean, we definitely showed our true nerdy colors in regards to the 620, and
We did. We
I
did.
don't have a problem with that. We could, if you want to talk for another hour, we could talk about patina. Is it worth it to preserve your patina
You
versus
already know my
we have
stance.
arguments. We already have arguments about this all the time. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's like
Ye-
tasteful patina, yes, but
Ru-
versus
Rust is art,
non-tasteful.
bro. Rust is art.
Rust is art. It's nature giving you art, bro. All right,
You
but
ever have a tetanus shot? Right. I,
you
I
ever
don't
have
have
a
a
tetanus
license
shot?
plate called.
That's nature giving you an injection
Yeah.
of art, brother. Is it?